Hello, everyone, and inside today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, we're talking potential buyout signings and how does the Filip Hronek deal impact Mike Matheson?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1093 of Locked On Canadiens. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, wherever you get your podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify, or here on YouTube.com. And today's episode is brought to you by the folks at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Some terms do apply. We've got a lot in this show. We've got another player review at the end of the show that we're going to talk David Savard's season and his overall career in Montreal up to this point. And then some news from around the NHL that I think kind of bleeds into some of the things that might impact the Canadiens in the relative near future. There's buyout rumors, there's brand new contracts for other defensemen. And I want to make sure that we kind of get into all of that. And I want to start with the buyout news. This was the big thing, is that Barclay Goodrow has been placed on waivers by the New York Rangers with the intention of hopefully a team might claim him, or maybe they work out a trade now that he's in the minors, that he can just be shuffled between those. And it's not Barclay Goodrow is the player that I am worrying about in this. I don't think he is a fit for what the Canadiens want, and I don't think that for that amount of money that he is getting paid right now is what this team needs. And also for a guy who's supposed to be a defensive forward, the metrics weren't there based on what I've seen from Ineffective Math, Michael Blake McCurdy on Twitter about him. There's a reason why he's potentially being bought out at the end of the day here. The big one is, and this is kind of a surprise to me, living in Buffalo and seeing, kind of how the Sabres fans analyze and look at their team here. I look at the potential rumor that Jeff Skinner is potentially going to be bought out when that window opens. After the Stanley Cup is awarded, there was a small window for buyouts to happen. The other one is after an arbitration hearing. If I have that wrong, please correct me. My @ is in the lower part of this video here. One day I will learn which direction to point in on my own screen here. There we go. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing me screwing up a lot. It was Jeff Marek who said this afternoon that there's a very likely chance there is a chance that Skinner is on the buyout list. And as I kind of look at this, Jeff Skinner signed a $9 million a year extension in 2019. Of course, that's coming off a career season where he put up 40 goals in 82 games with the Sabres, 63 total points that season. He then followed that up with an injured year, 14 goals, 9 assists, 23 points. COVID year, these are both COVID seasons, 53 games, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 total points. The next year, back to form, 80 points, or 80 games played, 33 goals, 30 assists on the Sabres. Last year, 35 goals, 47 assists. Big season for them, and they just missed the playoffs. This year dropped down a little bit, 24 goals, 22 assists in 74 games. He is due no signing bonuses anymore. All of his signing bonuses have been paid as of the end of last season, 23. So he is pure salary at this point, or pure cap it. There's nothing else to be paid out on this. And he has 4 years left. That's a big buyout. And I'm actually going to try and use the calculator here on Cap Friendly before they take it away from me, because thanks, Washington. And let's take a look at what Jeff Skinner's buyout looks like. It costs the Sabres about $2.4 million. He has a $1.4 million cap hit if they buy him out this year for next year. 4.4, 6.4, 2.4, 2.4, 2.4 without the cap hit, or with the cap hit there for Buffalo. And my question is, I look at this, that he is bought out. He's going to be getting paid some way, shape, or form. This is a dude who's played 1,000 NHL games, has 0 playoff games, and just turned 32 years old. And I look at this and I wonder, is this a guy that the Canadiens might be able to slide in that middle six, top six role to really give them a little bit more punch in their game. And my first thought is it might be tough because if we're being very honest, he's older now. He's 32. He's on the backside of his career. Relative coming out of the prime. I shouldn't say on the backside of his career. That comes off as very dismissive, and I don't mean it that way. And I'm just looking among Sabres forwards here for their on-ice statistics, just trying to see where everybody is. And he's up at the top for goals for percentage. The Sabre, maybe not expected goals. This is, well, where are you? He's 15th in expected goals, middle of the pack on scoring chances. He does a lot of things that you would want. He gets a lot of ice time on this team here. And I'm more and more wondering, hey, as opposed to slamming Josh Anderson into this spot again, can this be something that that the Canadiens do? And I'm actually going to take a look here at his total stats. Out of his 24 goals this season, 15 were scored at 5-on-5, which is good. 17 total assists at 5-on-5. So he's not collecting just power play points. A decent amount of individual high danger chances for individual expected goals. He was second on the team behind JJ Peterka. He had 14 over the course of the year. Not a lot on the rush, it's looking like here. Rebound chances created. He's second on the team just behind Dylan Cousins. So he's getting to the areas. And the thing is, he brings a little bit of, I don't want to say peskiness, but like, I can't say the word I actually want to say. He brings a little bit of crap housing to a team. Every time the Canadiens play Buffalo, Jeff Skinner is everywhere. He's a nuisance. He's a little bit of a hothead. Look at him kicking players. And the first game of the year this past year where he took a 5-minute major penalty and then blew the home opener for the Sabres because of his own lack of discipline on there. And I think that I'm not opposed to bringing that kind of player in. This is a guy who wants to win. It means a lot to him. And this is not a, it's not a fit with the team. It seems like he gets along great with the team this year. Honestly, like I look at the Buffalo Sabres and I see a lot of people who really do like Jeff Skinner. It's just, I don't understand the buyout. It's not my job to do that. You can listen to Lock On Sabres to have them figure that one out across the board. I'm just curious if, hey, one, would Skinner want to come to the Canadiens at 32 years old? He's only got so many more cracks at the swings at the ball here before you're calling it a day. Over 1,000 NHL games and no playoff games. It's very, very likely that the Canadiens are not what he's looking for. But I look at the style that Skinner plays. He's very direct. He gets to the net. He's great at deflecting pucks. He's somebody that I think would be a very good addition to not only their power play units, but their 5-on-5 if they're ever able to set up in the zone and to use some of that pugnaciousness, if that's a word. If it's not, whatever. It's my show. I can do what I want. And help the Canadiens find that next level here. He's better than putting Josh Anderson in this spot. And I think that Joshua Watt could also fit on that Kirby Dach line, but it means we don't have to force him into that if he's not quite ready for that next step yet. And you can have Watt on your third line with Armia and whomever your third line center is next season here. I'm speaking it out loud. I also don't know how much money he's going to want in free agency. If he gets bought out, it's not cheap for the Sabres to do that. And I'm wondering, they have a lot of cap space, so why they are doing this. I don't dislike the idea. And also the biggest thing out of all of this is that I would like the Canadiens to sign him so that every time we play a team that has Jeff Skinner on it, he isn't able to score against us anymore. That I'm hoping, does that Skinner magic apply to playing the Hurricanes and playing the Sabres, where he will just score relentlessly against them? Jeff Skinner has become the new RJ Umberger in terms of guy who might be on the worst scoring drought of his life will score 2 goals in this game without a doubt. It's written in the stars every time the Habs play the Sabres. Above all else, that's what I'm loving. I would love for that, just to have that off the board so they can stop. if you take away a bunch of Skinner's 2-point or 2-goal games against the Canadiens, the Habs record might be a lot better against Buffalo in the last 5 years than it has been. So I like the idea, but I understand that there are gaps to cross with that as well. We want to hear from you. What do you think about Jeff Skinner if he gets bought out? Can you bring him in cheap to Montreal, relatively speaking? Tweet us at LO_Canadiens, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We're going to dive into even more because there's another big contract out there. And speaking of buyouts, we're going to talk about that coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by GameTime. It is baseball season, and there's nothing better than going to the ballpark, getting a hot dog, getting a cold drink, watching dudes sock some dingers over whatever park wall you are at. And now it gets even easier with GameTime because GameTime is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And the price goes down closer it gets to first pitch. And the best part is you see the view from your seat. You're sure what it is. You're going to go cash out. And guess what? Price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees, nothing at all. And there's always last minute deals. There's flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing. So you will see exactly the price that you're paying. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, or I should say, I am back. I am Scott Madla. I am your host for Locked On Canadiens. Today, Laura, of course, is still on vacation. And before the show, I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do for content? What can I talk about? And, well, the Vancouver Canucks provided in not direct way, but a way that actually kind of clicked in my mind. They signed for their pending RFA with arbitration rights, Filip Hronek, to an 8-year, $7.25 million per year contract extension. Now, and based on what I've seen from the Canucks writers and bloggers and such that I follow, he was going to get paid in arbitration anyways because he had a hell of a year this year. And if he's going into arbitration and based on the price that they paid Detroit for Filip Hronek, they were not going to let this player go. And I go, okay, well, he was pretty good for them this year. And let me just I'm actually looking up his actual stats for the season at this exact point right now. I have not looked this up yet because I wanted to see how many points he scored this year. And let's take a look here. Wow, he's played for a lot of teams. He had 48 points in 81 games this season. I'm going to type in another name here and see how many points he had this season, which if you're reading this on YouTube on the side there, I'm looking up Mike Matheson's numbers, and he had 62 points in 82 games this year and played on a very bad Canadiens team. Hronek last year with Detroit before he was traded put up 38 points in 60 games, put up 38 points in 78 before that, 26 and 56, 31 and 65, 23 and 46, and then sometime in the AHL. Kind of similar to where Matheson was in terms of some of his time with both Florida and then Pittsburgh before coming to Montreal and kind of blossoming big time in the last 2 years in a lot of different ways. Because Matheson played just 48 games last year and put up 34 points, 62 and 82 this year. And now you're going to be asking yourself, Scott, what does that have to do with anything? Well, I'm looking at Filip Hronek's chart from Micah Blake McCurdy and Effective Math. He tweeted this out, so it is out there. And I am looking at the blue and the red splotches and the power play and the penalty killing splotches and everything on there. I'm not seeing a dude who should be getting paid $7.25 million per year. A -4 in terms of threat at 5-on-5 on the offensive side of things, +8 threat in the defensive zone, plus threat in the defensive zone, bad, plus threat in the offensive zone, good. -2 on the power play, +1 at the other end of the ice on that. And my thought is, okay, Mike Matheson's due up for a contract in the relative near future. Let's bring up his chart from Micah Blake McCurdy. At 5-on-5 in the offensive zone, a -7 threat. As we know, the Canadiens were not a very good 5-on-5 team this year with their injuries and having really truly one strong line with that. In the defensive zone, however, -2 threat around the net at 5-on-5. A guy who kind of was not known for his defense, but seemed to do pretty well in that this year. The offense struggles because the forward group is maybe not where it needs to be. On the power play, -3 threat, but he actually had a pretty good power play season based on the stats I've seen from Evolving Wild there. And as we know, we can see that +4 threat at the other end on that. Not the end of the world. And so I'm kind of looking at this right now for Mike Matheson. I want to go to cap friendly real quick. He is signed through the end of the 25-26 season at $4.875 million per year, modified no trade clause. So he is here for 2 more years before he's up for a contract. At which point he will be, if I'm doing my math here correctly, 32 years old. Filip Hronek at the time of signing this right now is 26. So he is obviously younger, and they are probably betting on that upside continuing. However, when I look at that, a lot of what Hronek had was driven by playing with Quinn Hughes, one of the best defensemen in the NHL. My fear is that for a guy who is, I don't want to call Hronek a third pairing defenseman because I don't think that's fair to him, but let's say vaguely a top 5 defenseman on your team. He's getting paid $7.25 million. Mike Matheson currently is the best defenseman on the Canadiens and is not even close. If Matheson were to come up for that contract and he continues, let's say maybe not 62 points again, but let's say he puts up 50 points or 45 points next season and then does that again in his final season of the contract. Are you comfortable extending Matheson even if it is, let's say, 3 or 4 years at $7.25 million? Because this seems like the new baseline for guys who will play a lot of minutes, put up a lot of points, but maybe are a little more flawed. I look at Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes should get paid, is getting paid, is the star on that team. And now you are losing Nikita Zadorov, who I think is actually probably the guy Vancouver wanted to sign. If you were the Canadiens and you're going to have guys like Gooley, who is up for a contract soon already, guy like Jacky, who is up for a contract, Justin Barron, Lane Hudson, David Reinbacher, Adam Engstrom, Logan Mailloux, whoever they might draft this season, are you willing to take $7.25 million and give it to someone who's older, but has played at that level previously, but might not hit that level after that? The cap should continue rising is the hope. If Matheson were up for and let me kind of rephrase this. If Matheson were also up for a contract right now, like going into this free agency period, he is due for a contract extension on July 1st or by July 1st, or he's a free agent. Would you give Mike Matheson that same deal, 8 times 7.25 a year? It becomes a lot harder to think about because of the age, but I look at that and I go, the Canadiens wouldn't have a choice because then who is your number 1 defenseman next year if he were up for a contract this year? And we're going to see in a couple of years, this might become more of a norm where second pairing defensemen are making $7 million. Like when second line centers went from making like $2.5 to $5.5 million. Good second line centers. Let me put that in perspective with that. I think that's a cost of living raise. And the Canadiens in 2 years are going to have to make this decision. Is this the guy that we're keeping? Or are you, if you're pushing for the playoffs, going to go, we can trade like Detroit did? They traded Hronek and got a first-round pick. They got a pretty good amount for him in a deal there. Do you make that same deal with Mike Matheson? It's a tough question. I think I'm willing to extend Mike Matheson to Montreal, but I don't know if I'm going to extend Mike Matheson at $7 million, depending on the trajectory of incoming prospects. Is Reinbacher rising on his way up? Is he hitting the goals that you were hoping for? Is Lane Hudson that guy at the NHL level coming through his first couple seasons here? Because he'll be up for a contract when Matheson is up for a contract. And if Lane Hudson is him, you're going to want to pay that man long-term to keep him here before that contract gets even more expensive down the line. So tweet us at LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. You can tweet me at Scott Matla if I don't see it or it's in my DMs. I've kind of checked them less because of the amount of spam on Twitter. but I want to hear from you. In 2 years, are you comfortable with extending Mike Matheson at $7.25 million per year? Let us know. We got one segment left, folks. We're going to dive into our last player review. We're going to talk David Savard coming up next. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens, and player reviews are hard when your team isn't great. It's probably even harder when everyone on your team is good, mind you. But I was very curious of what is the general consensus on David Savard. He's going into the final year of his contract, a deal where a lot of us, when we saw this deal get signed, went, I don't know about this. I don't know if this is a guy that I want to sign longer term, I should say, in terms of things. And they gave him, I believe was 4 years at, I should look this up. I had this on Cap Friendly because thank you. David Savard is 33, got $3.5 million per year. He signed a 4-year contract extension with Marc Bergevin in the 2021-2022 season. This was the answer to losing a guy like Shea Weber in the lineup. You still had Petrie, you still had Kulak, you still had Sherratt for the time being. And your response was, I'm going to bring in a guy who won a Stanley Cup with Tampa Bay on one of the most stacked teams of all time. And he ironically did that over the Canadiens here. And they went, I want to sign that guy. He's on the last year of his contract. And I think the biggest thing is David Savard's been asked to do a lot that probably isn't fair for him because he never should have been in the situation to have to take on minutes meant for somebody playing a much different role in this organization. Marc Bergevin and the team that was there at the time said, this is a guy who plays a lot of tough minutes, blocks and absorbs shots, the guys who you want in the playoffs. The biggest thing with getting a guy you want in the playoffs is you have to make the playoffs, and replacing everyone on this team. And then without Carey Price, signing David Savard without Shea Weber, done for career. Carey Price, done for career. Paul Byron on his way out, missing now Philip Hronek, your best defensive center, and a whole host of other changes going into this. You put a guy in a situation where it's like, we need you to block shots. By the way, there's going to be 40 of them a night. And you have him playing heavy situations. And that, yeah, it's great. He's in terms of defensive defenseman, David Savard is about as defensively defensive as it gets. And funny enough, this was one of his best years of his career this past year. Not quite the high of 36 points in 82 games with Columbus in 2014-2015, which again was 10 years ago. But he matched, some of his, he set some decent marks this season for a guy who doesn't put up a lot of points. 18 assists, 6 goals in 60 games. He did miss time due to injury in the past couple of years. He's battled a lot of injuries. It looks like he's had two full 82 game seasons. 181 game season. I'd be lying to you that I didn't include that, but he's missed time in bits and pieces of these other seasons, was traded in one of them. But the thing is that I look at this and I go, this is a guy when he's on the ice, goals will go in because he's not the fleetest of foot. David Savard is not the fastest man on the ice in a given time. He may be the slowest at some point, but he's a guy being asked to do first pairing things with a game that is meant for second and third pairing. You want to put him on for some defensive zone starts and have him block a couple of shots and clear the puck out, fine. But all too often is because his foot speed isn't where it needs to be, is chasing the play a little bit. I don't blame David Savard for, maybe not adjusting as well as he could have to this style here. And then Martin St. Louis came in. This is a team that is in flux. And you are a veteran who is in flux on this team, signed longer term, midterm, let's say. And he hasn't complained about it. He cares. Like David Savard cares. And that, I'm never going to doubt that. He was very happy to sign with the Canadiens. This meant a lot to him being a Quebecois player to go home and play for the Montreal Canadiens. Coming off a Stanley Cup, no less. I have no doubt that Tampa might have re-signed him, but he wanted to come home to Montreal. And he's down to the last year of his contract. People in the locker room love him. Everything we hear is that the team, the management, the coaching staff, everybody loves David Savard. And from people I know who worked with him when he was in the minors, said he's an absolute sweetheart, a pleasure to deal with, a consummate professional. All of that is true. And I'm hoping that this is the year maybe the Canadiens can send him out on a high note. With 1 year left on his deal, a Stanley Cup ring, those intangible things that are part of it, everything is leading up to David Savard is the Canadiens' biggest piece at the trade deadline this season. Whether or not what that means overall, he got traded for a pretty big haul going back to Columbus when he was traded to Tampa Bay. They gave a carte blanche basically to acquire him. Is there going to be a team out there that wants to add a veteran like Savard at this trade deadline just to give them that depth to get through? Tampa Bay already brought back Ryan McDonough. Who knows? Maybe they bring back David Savard. There will be a team out there. We know there were teams sniffing around him at this trade deadline, but nobody met Kent Hughes' asking price. We're a year on now. This is right around the time that we started seeing that Joel Edmondson trade happened. I still think that the ideal thing is to make that trade happen around the draft time and get some more picks in this draft and maybe add, if you can, in that regard. But everything is lining up that David Savard will not end this season with the Montreal Canadiens. If he does, either he was invaluable, like taking him out would catastrophically ruin the house of cards, or Kent Hughes overplayed his hand. And while we thought that about Jake Allen a little bit too, I thought that about Jake Allen. I shouldn't speak for anybody. I'm wondering if this is a thing that gets done even going into the regular season before training camp. And the team goes, hey, we're going to be without so-and-so. Off-season injuries happen. Training camp injuries happen. Preseason injuries happen. If something happens drastically to another team, well, we can bring in a guy who can play 20 plus a night, kill penalties, block a lot of shots, and try and stick up for some of the younger guys out there. Because I'm looking and I go, this is not a contract that should be extended, because I think he is holding a spot that could go to a lot of young upcoming defensemen right now. And for that, I don't want to block them from having that opportunity. And I don't think that it's wrong to say that, hey, if that offer comes along and let's say there's a first round pick in it for whatever reason, I'm not saying there will be, but if there is, take it. Or is he a part of a deal with, like, let's say the Jets pick and David Savard to move up in a little bit in the first round to draft somebody that they like? There's a lot of possibilities for this. My biggest thing for Savard is that this year, I'm hoping they kind of tone down his minutes a little bit. You can have Matheson playing 20 plus a night. You can have Gouli playing 20 plus a night. You can have guys like Hudson, potentially Reinbacher, maybe a guy like Arbor Jacki or Justin Barron, if they earn that spot, play more minutes, and you can have David Savard anchor your third pairing. Some defensive zone starts, chip the puck out, block some shots, penalty killing shifts, and then get rid of that. This season, I can't say that it was a bad season because, like, decent numbers, counting numbers, I should say. I should definitely paraphrase with that. No one on the Canadiens defense is going to have great advanced metrics. This was not a team that thrived at 5-on-5. They got shelled a lot. And sometimes they won because Samuel Montembeault, Caden Primo was really good. Or they got on a goal-scoring hot streak and outdid that. For David Savard, it's exactly what you expected. It's a B season. He's playing exactly as we all expected, that people who were looking at this deal went, maybe that's not the deal I want to make here. What's your grade for David Savard's season? As always, tweet us at LO_Canadiens, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com for longer questions. I am having Laura send us tomorrow evening to record. Hopefully we get some more Canadiens news. If not, we're diving further into player reviews. I'm reaching out to some scouting folks to talk about the draft with this week as well, because we are, I'm recording this, 10 days away from the draft, which is just so cool, which means 9 days away by the time you're hearing this. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott Matla. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.